Good morning, this is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters, CanadianTarot.com, your uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. Well, good morning and hello, kids, and welcome to season 4 and episode number 568 of the Daily Beaver Morning Show here on the Crier Media Network. Yeah, today recording day is Wednesday, January 29th, 2025. I was going to say Tuesday. And it's wintry day here at the Beaver Lodge. We got snow and we actually got a decent amount of it. And I think this might actually be our biggest snowfall this year so far. It actually, for the first time, it actually does really feel like winter, other than that really cold day that we had there the other day.
Yeah, we got a bit of a dusting here too, you can see. I don't know how much snow we got. It was snow when I went to bed. I guess it kept up.
Yeah, they were calling for 10 to 15 centimeters. I don't think we got. We didn't get anywhere near that. But it's like up until today, or yesterday, I should say. Yesterday was the first time I have not seen grass at any point. Because even with the snow that we had, we could always see some grass. There wasn't enough of it. So, water tables. Well, we've been getting a lot of rain though, so I guess the water tables might be fine. Just not a lot of snow. But yeah, it's a winter wonderland out there here at the Beaver Lodge this morning. So it's kind of actually it's pretty. So I take the beauty as a gift and I use it to fuel my day today. I'm your host, the Eager Beaver, pronouns he, him, hey, Mr. Beaver, and with me is my friend, Mr. Grizzly. Sorry for the late delay. We had a couple of things with YouTube and Restream trying to get them all connected, but we're all together now, and that's what matters, right? A big thank you goes to our podcast founding sponsors, the Peppermaster, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, and CanadianTarot.com. Before we go any further, I think we know what we're going to be talking about today. It was kind of a big day. But Mr. Grizzly, how's your mental health doing, sir?
Just keep talking.
Take a pass.
Yeah,
my friend.
I'm trying the melatonin for a week.
Okay.
I fall asleep quickly. Never been an issue for me. After 4 hours, I'm up again, and then I'm up every 30 or 40 minutes after that. So it's not good. It's not good.
Maybe go to sleep and take the melatonin after you wake up the first time.
I don't know. Maybe. I don't know.
Maybe.
Maybe.
I don't know. Oh, my friend. Trust me, as a chronic insomniac, I more than empathize. I've been there. I know it's not good. I am wishing you sleep. Kids and cubs. Let's see. All right. Yesterday, the Justice Marie-Josée Hogue came down with the foreign interference report. Mr. Wiz, I don't know if you have the clip of her press thing.
I'm looking for it.
Okay. It's about 23 minutes. It's pretty short. As I said yesterday, right? I may have made a little mistake yesterday in terms of like putting on the Christmas hat and whatnot, because it maybe gave the impression I tried to convey in the show, like, there's not going to be a list of names and there's not going to be a smoking gun. So wearing the hat is like, oh, something's coming down and it's going to get Skippy. It's not, something did come down that could possibly get Skippy. Right. But it isn't like, aha, here's this thing that says that India did it. They chose Skippy and now he is. And now you must go. Right. That was never going to happen. So if I raise those types of expectations with the Santa Claus hat, the Christmas stuff, I apologize, because that was not what I was going for. I was just very, 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 very happy that something was going to happen that would change the game for Skippy. And it did, because now most people maybe didn't notice it, because some of it was subtle, but it was there.
Oh yeah, I mean, look, to a large degree, a lot of people are of the opinion it was a big nothing burger.
Mm-mm.
To a large degree, a lot of people are of that opinion. I don't necessarily agree with them. It wasn't the smoking gun that people expected. I think a lot of people expected them to come out and say, Pierre Poilievre is guilty of this. I'm like, if he was guilty of that, do you think they would have just let him be free all this time?
Or do you think we would have waited now to a report? There would have been an investigation. There would be somebody would be wearing some special issue bracelets.
Yes.
Way long ago.
Perp-walked. He would have been arrested had that been the case. If he was directly, personally involved, that's what would have taken place. I do have a clip of the justice here speaking, though. I can put this up now.
Well, if you have the full thing.
Oh, this is
it would
just
be better.
1 minute and 40 seconds, this one. I don't have the full thing yet.
Okay.
The government has the primary responsibility for ensuring national security and protecting our democratic institutions. But what I have read and heard convinces me that society as a whole must contribute to defending these institutions if we want to ensure their survival. Foreign actors are no longer content to use traditional means to interfere. They are also using sophisticated technological means and increasingly sowing disinformation in traditional media, but above all on social media. Distinguishing what is true from what is false is becoming increasingly difficult, and the consequences are, in my view, extraordinarily harmful. The impact of traditional methods should not be underestimated, but the greatest threat, the one that I believe threatens the very existence of our democracy, is disinformation. This threat is all the more nefarious because the means available to counter it are limited and very difficult to implement. Nevertheless, we must not give up, but rather attack it forcefully altogether. This cannot be the sole purview of government.
Okay. Yes. That was around getting closer to the end of the press conference, where Justice Hogue made it very clear that this is not just a government thing, right? Everybody needs to do this. Everybody needs to play a part. And underlying that is the thing that she said in her mind was the most dangerous, which was disinformation, which she did not have a mandate to go into in this report. So she comes down, and I've sent you the whole thing there, Mr.
I have it now. Yeah.
If you want it. Okay. If you want to start, she starts the first bit with all the regular thank yous that are required for people that help with such a report. So I think maybe closer to the, let's say, 3-minute mark.
Okay.
And she does go back and forth in English and French. I'm not sure if this one here has the live translation or not on the CBC feed, because I had watched on CPAC yesterday. But we'll go back and forth as needed.
The commission was created, and I was appointed commissioner in September 2023. I was given a very precise mandate. First, I had to examine and evaluate foreign interference by state and non-state actors and its potential repercussions on the integrity of the last 2 federal general elections, the way in which related information about foreign interference circulated, and the measures taken in response to this information. Second, I was asked to examine and assess the government's ability to detect, deter, and counter foreign interference in democratic processes and institutions, and to make recommendations for strengthening Canada's protection against such interference. It is important to recall the nature of my mandate, as foreign interference goes far beyond what I was tasked to examine. Foreign interference can affect more than elections and democratic institutions. Just think of universities, scientific research, and private industry. Examining foreign interference in its entirety would have been a giant and almost impossible task, but that was not my mandate. Instead, in keeping with its mandate, the Commission conducted a thorough and rigorous examination of how foreign interference manifests itself in Canada's electoral processes and democratic institutions. At the outset of our work, I pledged that the Commission will carry out its mandate independently, impartially, fairly, and transparently. I will also add with rigor, proportionality, and speed. I believe it has done just that. La commission devait être disciplinée si elle...
The Commission had to be disciplined in order to meet its deadlines. We could not call every possible witness or introduce every bit of possible evidence. Rather, we focused on the key issues. I am certain that, at the end of the day, our work has led to a better understanding of foreign interference and of how the government is trying to counter foreign interference. The investigation has also enabled us to identify what the government has done well, as well as what it has done less well. We have also been able to identify ways that we can do better in the future.
La commission avait...
Okay,
the Commission's mandate was also to...
So, just want to make a note that when she was listing all the other places that foreign interference can take place, because outside that list, but can still take place, is also media. Right? We saw the whole Tenet thing, right? Tenet media. Yes. So media is also included in there. Now, you will notice she's still talking about the Commission's mandate. There is one thing that is not in the mandate.
Wouldn't Tenet media be considered along the lines of social media?
Mm-hmm.
Because they use YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever else. They're not really a traditional media source in the sense, right? Or legacy, right?
But also other media, because remember, Mr. Handong, the MP, actually has a suit against Global News.
Right.
And I'm not sure if it's just Global News and some individuals. I'd have to look that up. But there's stuff in this report that relates to that too. So that's why I'm saying also potential media. You can't. Now, media also makes errors, and there's going to be things that she says that leads to that too with regards to the NSICOP report. But when she's talking about the mandate, and I don't know if she says it explicitly here or if this is something I got from the commentary and whatnot, this is not a criminal inquiry.
Right.
Her mandate was not to get a list of names, find a list of names, investigate what they did, and then recommend whether or not there should be criminal charges. Right? So this was not a get the conservatives or get the traitors commission. This was a commission
looking for foreign interference, plain and simple.
What is it? What does it look like? What does it eat in winter? How does it work? Who are the players? Right? And that's why there was such a focus on diaspora communities, because they are often the targets. Foreign interference is often practiced through them. So, but just wanted to be clear, you know, she's stating stuff about the mandate. There's what's in the mandate. There's also what's not in the mandate. And that's why everybody's going like this, oh, well, it was a big nothing burger. Because, well, if you were expecting this, and a lot of people were touting this as the, you know, oh, Skippy's going to be so done. I mean, even we were wondering, you know, is there something in the report? But it's not that kind of report. Now, again, it's not that kind of report, but it doesn't mean that the report can't point to those types of things. And that's where this report is interesting. And that's where the no traitors headline yesterday may have taken away from everything. Because, oh, well, there's no traitors. Oh, well, no, there's still a lot in there. Mr. Grizzly, please.
1 second. I lost the feed there. Just a sec. I got it. What the hell? Where did it go? Ah, there it is. There it is. A second there. What's going on? Sometimes things in the background get lost translation, for want of a better term.
Make recommendations to strengthen the protection of our democratic processes and institutions against foreign interference. Our report contains 50 such recommendations. I would like to take a moment to remind you of the various steps in the Commission's work. In January 2024, we started by holding 5 days of public hearings on issues related to the Commission's need to both demonstrate transparency and protect national security. This preliminary work was important because the Commission needed access to highly classified Canadian intelligence holdings in relation to foreign interference. These hearings were very useful, as they enabled us to explore ways of making public information that was not intended to be public in order to inform Canadians. We then met dozens of potential witnesses and identified those who had relevant information, and we identified those who could shed light on the first part of the Commission's mandate. Given that most of the documents and information received by the Commission could not be discussed in public for reasons of national security, I first held 6 days of in-camera hearings. Those hearings were followed by 10 days of public hearings. During these hearings, I heard a total of 98 testimonies. Following these hearings, on May 3rd, 2024, I produced a report setting out my preliminary conclusions.
The Commission then pursued its investigation by seeking to better identify and understand the means available to Canada to defend itself against foreign interference. We obtained access to tens of thousands of documents and conducted over 100 interviews. This led to further hearings during which I heard 143 testimonies over 12 days of in-camera hearings and 20 days of public hearings. I also had the benefit of meeting and hearing from over 100 citizens from various diaspora communities who have been victims of foreign interference, particularly transnational repression. They shared their experiences with me, allowing me to better understand the human impact of this scourge. Finally, nearly 40 experts helped me consider the best ways to conduct this battle. Now, what must we retain from the Commission's work?
Okay, Mr. Greeley, step back for a second.
Firstly, that certain foreign states.
Yeah, just wanted to stop there because, and the reason that part sounded dry, and I understand for most people, but I want you to understand the level of work that goes into this, because it was a short period of time and people are thinking, oh, well, maybe it wasn't as thorough or not. That's a lot of work, right? Which you said like 143 testimonies in 12 days.
Yeah, that's a lot in a short time.
That's a lot of people to listen to. Okay. And this thing is I believe, 856 page, 7-volume report. The executive summary is 120 pages alone. This is thorough. This is extensive, right? And because there was a lot of in-camera stuff, because there was stuff regarding national security, it seems that at least from the media and the panelists and people who were commenting on this, it seems that for something that involved a lot of secrecy, this was as transparent as possibly could be, and this was very good work and very serious work. So there's absolutely no critique whatsoever that I've heard yesterday from anyone in the media, anyone in the punditry, anyone in the intelligence community, that this was shoddy work or incomplete work or insufficient work. That all of this was very, very valuable work that informed the Canadian public about a lot of things, that informed the media about a lot of things, that gives a good sense of the state of things. I guess so. The overall product is viewed, and seems to be universally so, as a service to the nation and useful. So I just wanted to point that out there. And that's all the to organize all that testimony and to go through and to make sure all the logistics when you're bringing all these people in, and then to write those reports. 7 volumes in this short amount of time. There is an entire team. So when I keep on saying, when politicians bash our public servants,
yes,
please remember that we have one of the most professional and nonpartisan public services in the world. And that this report can come out with this quality in this short a time frame and get this much praise is a testament to the quality of our public servants.
They get picked on a lot. In this city, they often get referred to as silly servants, right? Civil servant, silly servant. And they get picked on a lot. And, one of the old jokes used to be, why do civil servants stare out the window in the afternoon? Well, I don't know, because if they did it in the morning, they'd have nothing to do in the afternoon, right? That was the old joke, the old thing, right? Because they have nothing else to do. And I'm like,
wow.
With every organization, you are going to have a certain group of people who just don't do anything. They're dead weight. That happens in every organization, private, public, for-profit, nonprofit, you name it. There's always those people. But the amount of public servants that are highly dedicated to what they do and believe in what they do and work very hard at what they do far outweighs the numbers who just don't give a shit.
They could all be taking better not better jobs, higher paying jobs.
Yes.
In the private sector.
In the private sector, much higher paying jobs. And I know some people, a buddy of mine actually, had an opportunity to take a much higher paying job when he first got into the civil service. And he looked at what they offered him. And they offered him 2 weeks vacation, a truckload of money, plus bonuses and stock options and blah, 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 blah. Whereas in the public service, he had a steady, stable salaried income and started with 4 weeks vacation, every benefit known to the human race, personal days, sick days, all of those things. And he thought, yeah, I can take the private sector job, and technically it's a 40-hour work week. But most people work 60 to 70. My public sector job is 37 and a half hours. And I can put in extra if I like, and I do get paid extra if I do it. So they kind of discourage you working overtime.
Yes.
Unless it's absolutely deemed necessary.
To get the project done for the public.
Like CERB, as an example.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, he decided, no, I'm going to stick with the public sector. And now he's earning a lot of money, over 170 because of his position. He's gone up the ranks over the past 20 some years.
Right.
And he's never regretted it. He's like, are you
Yeah.
kidding me? I take 8 weeks off in the summer. I take the whole summer off. I get to hang out with my kids, sit by the pool. We camp, we travel. I get the whole summer off.
Yeah, after
Who gets
20
to
years.
say that?
Yeah, but that's the same thing then. One of the reasons I started my career in the civil service, and all my communications, PR career for the most part, has been in the civil service, is you get to work on things that matter.
Well, and that was the other thing too. I can't tell you where he works. Let's just say it's very high. It's very high up.
But I worked at the
And he
Canadian.
loves what he does.
Yeah, I worked at the Canadian Space Agency when John Glenn went up in space as a senator. There's that thing you said about working overtime. Yeah, we were starting a website for kids called Kids Space so that they can follow all that stuff, and it absolutely had to launch. I slept there that night,
Oh, I believe it. Yeah.
the night before, just to make sure that it launched. I mean, like, public servants are that was my first job as a public servant. In my first week there, I slept on the job in order to get the thing done so that the kids could get on the internet and interact.
Well, and when you're given a
Right?
deadline that looks like, oh God, how are we going to do this? You do realize you're going to put in some overtime. Thankfully, because it is the public service, that will get documented, and you will get either time off in lieu of or paid extra for it. You make the choice in that. In the private sector, they're like, thanks.
Yeah.
I'm speaking from multitudes and decades of experience. The last gig I had before I moved into the office job I had, I put 40 hours of overtime on one project. I was a salaried employee. I put 40 hours of overtime on one project, and I got nothing for it.
Mhm.
No
So-
time off, no money, not even a thanks.
Yeah. So, but when you're talking about dedication, right? It was, promoting space to kids is stuff
Yes.
that I did. Working the national child benefit that came before the Canada Child Benefit that came in under CRITSE when they had the
Mhm.
children's budget. I worked on the communications on that. It
Well,
was the biggest file. It was the theme of the budget that year, was the children's budget.
And you have to remember,
Right.
too, so many people that get into the public service are, I'm going to use this term so it gives you an idea of what I'm trying to describe. It's not the right term, but idealists.
Mhm.
They're dedicated. They want to make a difference for
Mhm.
their fellow citizens. They feel a sense of community and want to help each other. That's why I laud the public service. Yes, there's dead weight there. There's dead weight everywhere.
Everywhere.
But people get, well, that's my tax dollars. And I go, uh-huh. You know what else your tax dollars funded? General Motors.
And when, listen, the dead weight, you say my tax dollars fund that. Any dead weight in a regular corporation, your purchasing dollars fund that.
Yeah. So
It's
you're
no different,
funding
right?
it no matter what you're funding it.
So,
It's always going to exist.
but
Always.
I did want to point out, as a former public servant who worked very hard, who almost burned out, working very hard.
Mhm.
And that happens a lot in the public service too, especially when they have cuts, because, it has to look good politically that we cut. And then all those people there, all that extra work needs to get done because the population keeps growing, but the staff is shrinking.
Right.
Right. So, yeah, a shout out to our public servants here. Okay.
It's serious.
Now,
Look.
if you go back a second or two to get back, because she's going to say now.
I
Here's
gotta
the
go
meat.
back a few seconds. All right.
Now, what must we retain from the Commission's work? Firstly, that certain foreign states are attempting to interfere in our electoral processes and democratic institutions. This is not a new phenomenon, nor should it surprise us. States have been trying to interfere with each other since the dawn of time. What is new, however, are the means being deployed by these states, the extent to which the phenomenon seems to be taking hold, and the fact that it is being talked about publicly. That said, and it is one of my most important observations, our democratic institutions have remained robust in the face of attempted foreign interference. Although there are a very small number of situations where foreign interference may have had some impact on the outcome of a nomination contest or the result of an election in a given riding, foreign interference did not impact the outcome of the last 2 general elections. Although a few situations involving attempts to curry favor or develop problematic relationship with a parliamentarian have come to light, such phenomena remain marginal and so far appear to have been largely ineffective. Some may have benefited from the support of a foreign state, sometimes without knowing anything about it. But again, so far, this does not seem to have led to any real gains for the states involved. Nor have I seen any evidence to suggest that there are currently so-called traitors in Parliament. While I saw evidence of some concerning behavior, the evidence does not show any MPs plotting with foreign states against Canada's interests. Alors maintenant, que faut-il retenir des travaux de la Commission?
What are the
All right, so she's going to repeat it in French. Mr. Grizzly, however, from the point where she ends saying this in French, I think she continues in French with another point. So you might have to look at the wording there.
a few situations
So
far?
here, if you could do the thing with this here is there's what she's putting the emphasis on, but she's saying other things too. And a lot of the reporting is kind of losing the other stuff. So first of all, foreign interference isn't new, right? Attempting, there's always going to be nations attempting. Canadians need to realize, because when all this thing started, well, why would anybody interested in us like this? We're kind of a big deal. We don't say that about ourselves.
No, because we're not a boastful nation for the most part, but it's true.
But on the world stage, we're kind of a big deal.
Yeah, you got to remember, we have
interested in us.
All the wood, all the water, all the diamonds, all the oil, all the minerals. We have all the uranium. We have everything. And here's the best part. Here's the best part. We don't even know how much of it we have.
Yeah. And usually, also the ear of the United States.
Yes. Yeah.
Which makes us very, very, very valuable and important. So it's always been there, but the means are different. And as she later says as well, it's the means available are multiplying, and the ability to respond to them is limited, right? So this is very important. It's always been there. This is not a new phenomenon. We're talking about it more. It's in the headlines more. We're seeing it more. Some of it is outright overt, right? Some of it's outright shameless. So it's an important thing here. Now, she says there is no evidence of traitors.
Mm-hmm.
But the other part of that is, right, we have seen a few cases involving things like attempts to curry favor. So, and we know that maybe wittingly or unwittingly, based on the NSICOP report, that some people may have been involved with that. So when MPs become MPs, there's a bit of an orientation period. Perhaps there are things that need to be changed so that all MPs get a basic course or whatnot in what being approached in that way, especially very subtly, might look like. That's a change that we can bring about. And it's not, at least based on the intelligence, at least how it was interpreted by the NSICOP people, because we didn't get it directly from the intelligence community ourselves as Canadians, right? We got it filtered through that NSICOP report that came public. And then the subsequent short inquiry into that. Um, how would I put it? There was some stuff in there that was noted or that was reported that would let us believe that even though it is marginal, even though it is just a few cases, even though it may have had an impact on an election in a riding or a nomination race, which is already bad enough,
Hmm.
but not an overall outcome. So there are things there. There are people who might be either targets and not knowing, or naive as they're trying to build relationships, or some might be not all right traitors, but unethical, let's say. And all of these are problems. These are not things that we go, oh, well, it's not so bad. Or it's marginal. The system is robust. There's been no significant impact yet. But there are little points here and there of things that we should maybe look at and develop some guardrails from so that they don't become big points. So there's some stuff in there, right? She also says that specifically here, while we are not aware, when she says traitors specifically, when she ends it, right? She says working with a foreign government against Canada. Remember, treason is a very specific word legally. So when the headlines say no traitors, what you need to hear is no conduct that meets the legal definition of treason under the Canadian Criminal Code.
Hmm.
But specifically, and there is some concerning conduct by parliamentarians. So a lot of people focused on the first part of that.
Right.
But the second part of that, there is some concerning conduct by parliamentarians. That's what everybody's saying, hey, there's a list of names, whatnot. That's probably what the list of names is, but there is no list of names in this report, just like there was no list of names in the NSICOP report, as Elizabeth May told us.
Yeah, she said there was nothing there.
There was no traitors. She was relieved. So Elizabeth May, what Justice Hogue here is saying pretty much lines up with what Elizabeth May said, kind of lines up with François Blanchet said, because he didn't really say anything and he didn't make a big deal of it whatsoever. Does not line up with what Jagmeet Singh said, though, however.
Yeah, that was curious because he kind of led us to believe something else altogether.
Now, maybe Jagmeet Singh was focused on this concerning conduct by parliamentarians, but he too, when he saw the NSICOP report, he saw the redacted one.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the unredacted one. Yes, he did get to see that redacted one because he got a security clearance. Yes.
Correct.
He didn't have a list of names when he said that. So there was some behaviors based on the intelligence that got into the NSICOP report that he thought was very, very concerning. Yesterday, when he had his press availability, his tune on that changed as best as he could. But I don't think that he was necessarily lying, right? Because Justice Hogue has some comments about the NSICOP committee and the report specifically, and a really big concern that we need to address, which could have led to Jagmeet Singh saying that. But Jagmeet Singh also had the choice of how much alarm he was going to raise with that report.
Correct.
And he might have laid it on a little thick.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I agree with that. And one of the other things that needs to be addressed here is how many pundits, how many times did Pierre Poilievre demand that the Prime Minister released the names.
Well, he really pumped it up.
Yeah.
I guess. Well, so again, when we're saying, when the title is Justice Hogue corners Pierre Poilievre, because there's going to be, when you hear some of the things that she says, and it's really subtle, and then you go back and you look at the behavior that was exhibited, you know exactly who she's talking about.
Yeah. It's pretty obvious, but there's no names to be named here.
No.
This is the thing.
No, but she's talking about, remember, she's talking about phenomenon.
Right.
Stuff that happens, and the stuff around it.
Let's zoom out and look at this from the bigger picture. The leader of the opposition was demanding the Prime Minister break the law.
Yes.
And release the names.
Over and over and over, and doing stuff that would make us weaker.
Correct. Weaken our national security. Demanding this.
And allowing people to get off the hook, too, because if there was any criminal cases, all that would have been blown up.
So who wants a man like that to be Prime Minister? The man who refuses to get his clearance, number one. Number two, demands that the Prime Minister break the law. And then number three, there are no names to be released. Mm-hmm. Now, if he had his clearance, he would have known that.
Yes. And remember, he tried to tell us that his chief of staff had gotten a briefing that he tried to spin as being equivalent to one. And the chief of staff didn't hear anything. So therefore, he had nothing to worry about. But we all know, thanks to the two former Dick Fadden and Reg Alcock, right, that a chief of staff would never, ever, ever, ever be given that information, because the chief of staff is not in a position to take action based on that information.
There's nothing
just because you have a top level NSICOP level security clearance, which the chief of staff does not, but even if you did, doesn't mean you get to see everything, because it's still need to know. The clearance doesn't allow you to walk into every room and find out everything. It still need to know. It's just that you have the clearance to know if you need to know.
Well, and here's something else you need to understand, too. Need to know can apply to different levels of government and different levels of security organizations. Yes. So there are things that security organizations know that the Prime Minister isn't privy to because, again, need to know basis. If he doesn't need to know it, why would you give it to him? He's got enough on his plate.
Mm-hmm. And if he can't do anything about it,
why tell him?
Why tell him? So
that's the way it's always been, though, folks. This is nothing new. It's been this way for a century or more.
Right. So, but with all of that, is not aware of any federal legislation or policies that have been enacted or repealed on account of foreign interference. All right. There's no cause for widespread alarm.
And Elizabeth May said that in the beginning, too.
And you know who else said that?
The Prime Minister.
And you know who said that? Former Governor General David Johnston.
That's correct. Yes, he did say that.
And what does Skippy do to him?
Threw him under the bus, accused him of being in the Prime Minister's pocket, and called him the Prime Minister's ski buddy because they went skiing once when Justin Trudeau was 12.
Mm-hmm. Which delayed the process.
Of course it did.
Then they had to name a commissioner, and then they would not participate, which delayed the process. And now we've gone through all of this inquiry, I guess, to find out that David Johnston, there's not that much in depth. Trust me, the work still has value. But the overall conclusions, whether or not we needed to panic as a nation.
Right.
Yes. What David Johnston, which delayed taking any action on the stuff that we knew about foreign interference by 8 months. Who delayed us 8 months?
The loyal opposition.
Huh?
There's nothing loyal about the opposition.
And he destroyed a man in the process.
In the process, yeah. And he didn't give a shit. No care. Didn't care one bit.
Nope.
No apology. No, nothing. Didn't give a damn.
A man that worked for them.
Yes, exactly. As long as it advances his cause, he doesn't care. Look at what Mark Carney did for this nation back in 2008, and look at what the Conservative Party is trying to do to him now. They don't give a damn about anyone but themselves getting power and hanging on to it. And they will stomp on anyone on their way up the ladder.
Mm-hmm.
They don't give a shit.
And also, ironically, former Governor General David Johnston was the Governor General that gave Stephen Harper the fourth of his 4th prorogations.
Yes. Yeah. It's funny how that works, huh?
History. Oh, how it rhymes.
Shall we continue?
So, yes.
Has responded to the increase in attempted foreign interference by putting in place numerous measures and mechanisms to better detect, prevent, and counter it. I describe these in detail in the report. However, the government sometimes took too long to act, and coordination was not always optimal. The means used to communicate information to certain decision makers, including elected officials, proved imperfect. Sometimes, very much so, since certain documents never got to where they were supposed to go, and there seems to be no good reason why. But above all, I found that the government has been overall a poor communicator when it comes to foreign interference. La plupart des Canadiennes et des Canadiens ont...
Most Canadians first learned about foreign interference through media reports, without the government being the source of the information communicated. This should not have been the case. The government needs to better inform the public, and it needs to be more transparent. Of course, sometimes the government is justified in keeping its operations and knowledge secret. And in matters of national security, sometimes it is essential for the government to keep things secret. But the government must find ways of keeping the public informed to prevent a loss of confidence, public confidence, in our institutions. The measures put in place over the past 2 years and the evidence I heard on the subjects suggest that the government is now making the fight against foreign interference a high priority.
Government has the primary responsibility for ensuring national security and protecting our democratic institutions. But what I have read and heard convinces me that society as a whole must contribute to defending these institutions if we want to ensure their survival. Foreign actors are no longer content to use traditional means to interfere. They are also using sophisticated technological means and increasingly sowing disinformation in traditional media, but above all, on social media. Distinguishing what is true from what is false is becoming increasingly difficult, and the consequences are, in my view, extraordinarily harmful. The impact of traditional methods should not be underestimated, but the greatest threat, the one that I believe threatens the very existence of our democracy, is disinformation. This threat is all the more nefarious because the means available to counter it are limited and very difficult to implement. Nevertheless, we must not give up, but rather attack it forcefully altogether. This cannot be the sole purview of government. It will not work. Les acteurs étrangers ne se contentent plus de...
Who are we talking about here?
Well, I'm going to go out on a limb.
After that paragraph, all heads in the nation snapped to Skippy.
Anyone who is paying careful attention. Yeah.
I saw you smiling as she was talking, Mr. Grizzly. You knew who she was talking about.
Of course I did.
The most significant threat is disinformation. Who is the number one purveyor of disinformation in this nation? Who gets off on taking situations and overblowing them, like, let's say, a car accident on the U.S. side of the Canada-U.S. bridge.
And immediately calling it a terrorist attack when nobody had said anything of that nature. He likes to sensationalize things, like the National Enquirer, which is, yeah.
Release the names, release the names, release the names. Now we need to find the traitors. Release the names, release the names. Who's the one that was leading the moral panic parade on foreign interference? And who was the one that was uncooperative every step of the way and tried to delay it? Same guy. Who is the guy that is the number one purveyor of what she says is the number one threat? Him.
Pierre Poilievre.
Distinguishing what is true from what is false is becoming increasingly difficult, and the consequences are, in my view, extraordinarily harmful. Immediately after she says that this is an all of society thing, which means it's not just a government thing. If we're talking about government, because we elect a parliament, not a government, it's an all of parliament thing, and it's a you, me, everybody thing. And we have one person who is supposed to be the leader of His Majesty's loyal opposition, who aspires to be prime minister, who does not seem to be anywhere on board with the mission of protecting Canada from disinformation. Kirkland Lake Pot Farms remembers.
Yes. Just got back from the Pierre Poilievre. You live in France. What the hell are you doing in Kirkland Lake?
I just took a subway to my high school and we were all talking about Ruby Dalla and cheering out loud.
Again, pull this leg and it plays Jingle Bells. What the fuck is wrong with people?
Okay.
You can't even lie good. I mean, seriously, look, if you're gonna act, take a class.
Okay.
Be convincing. Because you're not convincing me of anything because it's such a blatant falsehood. It's not believable. Yes, high school kids on the subway. I know that normally they talk about Ruby Dalla and Mark Carney as a topic of conversation because, Taylor Swift isn't a thing. K-pop isn't a thing.
Tate McRae isn't a thing.
Like what? Timothy Chalamet? Come on.
Right.
Look, I remember engaged students when I was in high school who were engaged in politics. There was about 3 of them in a school of 2,000 people. 3.
It's more today, but things have changed.
But come on, just randomly discussing it on the subway.
No,
she seems more relatable.
No.
They don't even know who she is.
Exactly. No.
They were in grade school when she was in politics. Hell, some of them probably weren't even born.
Come on. It's like, what percentage of they were showing pictures of Mark Carney in Edmonton on the day I was thinking most people didn't recognize him, right? On city TV. It's like you show an average Canadian like this picture of cabinet, and other than the prime minister, they can't name anyone. Not even Chrystia Freeland sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like her name recognition is like, I think 29% or something. I mean, it's so if Chrystia Freeland, who's been literally by his side, nodding enthusiastically to everything he says for 9 years, because through everybody in the country, adults, like people whose lives are directly affected by what the government does and might be paying attention. If she has a name recognition of about like face recognition of 1.4, I guess, and now we're talking about like kids on a subway.
Yeah.
Come on, man. We're not like, unless you have like 1 or 2 special, we're not looking forward to the next interest rate announcement, right? They're not thinking about that. So, I mean, there's the tell a big lie, like the election was rigged. Mm-hmm. Okay, that you can go far on because there are people willing to be, but the big lie. We're all talking about Ruby Dalla. You need a better big lie.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look. There's the big lie floating right now that Trump seems to be propping up. I know that I'm switching gears a little bit here about how the conspiracy theory that the Trump rigged the election via Elon Musk and voting machines. It's a conspiracy theory. Until somebody presents me with proof or any actual solid hard evidence that it took place, I'm not going down that rabbit hole. No, because they're just trying to sucker you. They want to say, stop the steal again. No, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, it could be a legitimate, because we can't put anything past these people, but it could just be, hey, that worked well from the right. Let's see if we could do it from the left and milk this cow again. And it could be the same damn people doing it, right? We saw that during the convoy stuff, right? Come and protest for this. Oh, protest anti-Russia, and like this. And then 2 blocks away, come for protest pro-Russia, this. And then they look back and they said, wait a minute, it's the same damn account holder somewhere in Belgium. What the hell?
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, yeah, I said it before, but I don't think I've put as much emphasis on it. We are being worked hard, kids and cubs. We are being worked. So when she says distinguishing from what is true, what is false is becoming increasingly difficult, and the consequences, in my view, are extraordinarily harmful, we need some institutions and we need some things that we can trust. And who's trying to get rid of the CBC?
Pierre Poilievre.
You see all the little subtle...
A long-standing, globally respected news gathering and reporting organization. One that is in the interest of the public, because again, remember, there are millions of Canadians who live in remote rural areas where their only choice is CBC, because private sector can't be bothered because there's not enough profit there. CBC is a public broadcaster and a public service, just like Canada Post. They're not supposed to be profitable. It's a service. They do their best to earn money. Hockey Night in Canada was their big cash cow. That was the one that created the most revenue for them. And people got mad when they said, why aren't they buying it out? It's because Rogers offered billions. If CBC offered billions for the same contract, the Conservative government would be screaming from the high heavens.
Right.
Funny thing was, when a game wasn't covered by the CBC, what did the Conservatives do? Scream from the high heavens.
Right.
There's no satisfying these people.
Yes. Well, you could have had that had you paid for the rights for the theme song and actually renewed the contract.
But they didn't want to pay for it. But you
didn't want to do that because you wanted to kill the CBC.
They got mad because Hockey Night in Canada theme song went to a private broadcaster when it should have remained in the hands of the CBC, but the CBC didn't own it.
They never bought the rights.
It's just ridiculous.
And then when it came time to pay for it, after using it for X number of years, it's like, no. It's like, well, clearly it has value. You kept it for 30 years. Pay the woman.
Mm-hmm.
Pay her what she's worth.
She got more on the open market. Okay. That's reasonable. That's how it works, right? You want a free market economy, but you only want it to work exactly the way you want it. Well, she gave
them first option.
Yeah. And they said, we can't pony up that kind of cash. She said, okay. I'll go to the private sector.
And again, right, the same group of people that get all apoplectic about Terry Fox disappearing as an image from inside your passport couldn't find the extra dough. And I'm sure, on a national economy, it was maybe 0.0001% of our budget to ensure that stays on the CBC.
It somehow, I think there are millions of Canadian passport holders who didn't know who Terry Fox was before they got their passport. They're erasing Terry Fox by taking him out of the most ridiculous damn thing I've ever heard. So I love how the Bank of Canada says, yeah, fuck you, he's on the 5.
Love it. It says, well, will PP still want to get rid of the governor of the Bank of Canada or at least put Terry Fox on the 5? I mean, what a terrible scandal that would be, considering how much PP
Pierre
really
Poilievre hates Terry
Fox.
Fox. That's it. He hates Terry Fox because he wants to get rid of the Bank of Canada. That's it. That's what it is, right? He hates Terry Fox.
Yep.
Ooh, and don't get rumor right now.
And don't get me started on his thoughts about Viola Johnson. I keep on wanting to say Viola Davis.
Viola Desmond.
Viola Desmond. So I know a Viola Johnston as well, actually personally. Oh my God, Viola Desmond. Yes, Vi Johnson. Somebody that I know. So first I was saying the actress, and then I was saying, and believe Viola Johnson also happens to be a Black woman.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm seeing Viola Johnson in my head, thinking of Viola Davis while I'm trying to talk about Viola Desmond.
So is the king going to be on the 20, and who's going? Are we taking what's his name off the 50? Mackenzie King? Is he coming off the 50? Borden is still on the 100. Maybe we should put Harry Jerome on the 50.
Yeah, so far no plans for that yet. But oh my God, my brain. Sorry, kids and cubs. It's all over the place. All right. So
how about Smokey Smith? Sorry, I'm just rambling.
But very important. So basically, she is building neon signs, arrow shaped shaped as arrows, and pointing them here to Pierre Poilievre. This may explain why, again, as Mr. Grizzly said, that he went back into hiding on the day of the release of the foreign interference report, the day that you would expect the leader of the opposition, who demanded this damn thing in the first place, to come in front of a camera and talk to us and not at us, but he only talks at us, was nowhere to be seen or found. Again, such leadership. Are you in awe of it? Where is his ass at?
Well, I don't know. I'm trying to find info on him here.
There is some info. There is some info. Trust me.
No, I can't find anything from him directly, though. Like,
no, there's nothing.
Made a statement. Nothing.
No, nothing. I was on YouTube yesterday all day, filtered. Pierre Poilievre posts today. Nothing. There is one article, though. He did say something.
Oh, yes?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. And it's a doozy. Mr. Grizzly, let's continue.
Okay, 1 second here. It seems to be radio silence from him.
Foreign actors are no longer content to use traditional means to interfere. They are also using sophisticated technological means and increasingly sowing disinformation in traditional media, but above all, and most of all, on social media. Distinguishing what is true from what is false is becoming increasingly difficult. And the consequences are, in my view, extraordinarily harmful. The impact of traditional methods should not be underestimated, but the greatest threat, the one that I believe threatens the very existence of our democracy, is disinformation. This threat is all the more nefarious because the means available to counter it are limited and are also very difficult to implement. Nevertheless, we must not give up, but rather attack it forcefully altogether. This cannot be the sole purview of government. But we must also be realistic. Foreign interference will never be completely eradicated, and it will always be necessary to counter it. This is even more true as the world changes and becomes increasingly unstable or destabilized. Democracies across the world are under attack from all sides, and the technological resources available to malicious actors are multiplying.
Foreign interference will never be completely eradicated, and it will always be necessary to counter it. This is even more true as the world changes and the world order seems to destabilize. Democracies around the world are under attack from all sides, and the technological resources available to malicious actors are multiplying. It will therefore be a never-ending battle. One of our society's greatest achievements is to have created a political and social order that give us the freedom to choose those who will represent us in government, the right to contribute to discussions about our future, and the chance to live in peace with one another. But protecting these achievements requires that all of society, including each and every one of us, contribute particularly to the war against mis- and disinformation. L'une des plus grande réussite de notre société.
One of our society's greatest achievements is to have created a political and social order that gives us the freedom to choose those who will represent us in government, the right to contribute to discussions about our future, and the chance to live in peace with one another. But protecting these achievements requires that all of society, including every one of us, contribute, particularly to the war against misinformation and disinformation. I hope that this report will help to clarify the way forward. I hope that the report will encourage each and every one of us to help protect our democracy. Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, I won't take any question because, as you know, the report won't speak for itself. Thank you.
Wow. That was pretty ballsy.
856 questions. Pages. Perhaps read it.
I'm out. I'm out.
But again, that is the right thing.
Yes.
For someone in that position, because the questions then get some political tinge and whatnot. It's like everything I've needed to say, I've said here and in the report. My work here is done.
Yeah.
So, if there's any questions, further questions from her, it would come from committee, and she would go and testify there. But for this part, yes, remember she's tasked with doing a public inquiry. It's a quasi judicial thing, right? She's not a media personality. She's not a politician. Right? So,
right.
And she's a justice. So, or former justice or retired justice or, but that's the rigor and the method is obvious. And there are standards that people in this realm hold themselves to when it comes to making public commentary. And a lot of these people maintain these standards even after their career, if they're referred to as some type of eminence grise. Right.
This is from last night. Poilièvre rejects terms of CISA's foreign interference briefing. Spy agency said in December it would give Conservative leader briefing without him needing security clearance. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is rejecting the terms of a briefing from Canada's spy agency regarding foreign interference because it won't enable him to act on the information, his office says. CISA said in December that it was looking to share some information to the leader of the official opposition through a threat reduction measure. But a spokesman for Poilievre said Tuesday that the Conservative leader wouldn't be able to act upon the information he received from the CISA's briefing. Poilievre would be legally prevented from speaking with anyone other than legal counsel about the briefing and would be able to take action only as expressly authorized by the government, rendering him unable to effectively use any relevant information he received. Does he not know how this fucking system works? Good God, man. Of course you can't use it, you shithead. It's top secret information. He just wants to use it to slander others. And if he can't do that, well, don't give me that information. This man is not fit to lead a Boy Scout troop. He's not fit to lead a one-car parade. He refuses information because he can't use it to improve his lot in life. This is who he is. He cares only of himself. He doesn't care for this country, as evidenced by his statement. This is unbelievable. I can't believe we're living in a time when something like this is taking place. And yet here we are. Unbelievable. How is this man the leader of the opposition? Oh, right. Right. India. Right. Okay. Yeah. He will do nothing to help you. He will do nothing to help further this country. He will do nothing to make your life better or easier. He will help out corporations by giving them massive tax cuts at your expense. Jesus Christ almighty. Completely exasperated some days. just like, oh my God. Slamsky said not allowing Poilievre to act goes against the point of a threat reduction measure in the first place. Other party leaders have been calling on him to obtain security clearance so he can review classified documents regarding foreign interference. But the Conservative leaders rejected those calls, arguing that he wouldn't be able to freely speak or criticize the government based on the top secret information. That is a bullshit argument. Everybody else has it. Everyone else has it. This man is a child. An infant. And that's an insult to infants. This is unbelievable. I'll put the link to this story in the chat if those want to read it. It's this is from the CBC. I just how is this man still in the position that he's in? I don't get it. He wants to be, exactly what Charles is saying. He wants to be free to speculate on liberal dirt. He wants to be free to rage farm. If he knows the facts, he can't lie. Ugh. Just beyond belief.
All right.
You seem upset with me.
I was building up to that, and I had hinted 3 times that was coming. So that's okay.
Well, you got to send me messages, man. I don't know.
That's okay.
I don't know what you're thinking. Sorry.
That's okay. All right. So, yes. Skippy did finally say something and said that after all of this, he was going to be unhelpful. Part of the story that was missing to bridge to get to this piece that I was going to go into is that if you read the report has 7 volumes. The 5th volume is on the recommendations, and she has 51 recommendations that she could put in. 24 of them are things that she says should be done promptly. Some of them do not require legislation. Some of them do. But we have 3 political parties right now that say that they're going to take down the government at the first opportunity. But there are now recommendations on the table and things that the justice says that should be put in place promptly, some of them prior to the next election. Will the opposition parties cooperate with that? And one of those recommendations, unfortunately, was not making it mandatory, but was encouraging every leader of a party. I believe the exact wording was leaders of all political parties represented in the hold on, let me just make this smaller so I can see it. Leaders of all political parties represented in the House of Commons should be encouraged and given the opportunity to obtain top secret security clearances as soon as possible after they become leaders. Well, this opportunity was offered to one. I am surprised that the recommendation isn't that it should be made mandatory, legal. But Pierre Poilievre was saying that, well, I can't get this top security clearance because that's just a ploy from the Prime Minister to try to give me information and then muzzle me so I can't speak to it.
The Prime Minister
Well, now a
doesn't give me
justice.
information.
Well, now a justice is telling you you should get it.
Mm-hmm.
The justice of the damn inquiry you demanded is telling you it would be really great if the leaders of all political parties represented in the House of Commons obtained their top secret security clearance. They were encouraged and given the opportunity as soon as possible after they become leaders.
I was surprised to learn it already wasn't the law. I mean it. I was surprised to learn that. I mean, honest to goodness, I was surprised to learn it already wasn't the law. Because I've had to get secret level 2. I had to apply for my top secret clearance just to be in a room where I wouldn't be privy to any information at all. But I needed to be in a room. The project changed so I didn't have to follow through with the interview. Filled out more documentation. Although that being said, I remember, and I have said this in the past, and I'll say it again for those of you who might be unaware, years ago when I was completely out of work, completely out of money, all my savings had been exhausted, and I had no other choice. I had to go to Ontario Works to apply for what we would call welfare. They asked more probing questions than I did to fill out my top secret security forms. I'm not joking. They asked more probing questions. It was dehumanizing. And then I found out I was entitled to $725. My rent's over $1,000. How was I going to survive? The system is designed to keep us down. But what I'm saying is they asked more probing, in-depth questions about my life, my past, what I did, to get $725 of public funds as opposed to top secret security clearance to work at RCMP HQ.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So you got...
It's all upside down.
So all of this comes out. Pierre has nothing to say to us, has no response, nothing public. But we get through media reports that even though he refused to take the first one because he said the Prime Minister can just give me that information, which he can't. And then the Prime Minister came out and said, remember when he said, we're trying to find a way to get Pierre some information. So they were going to do a ask CSIS to gather whatever information they could, right? To do a threat reduction measures with him.
What can we give you, right?
Yeah. Well, according to this, in early December, the Canadian Security Intelligence had determined that it could share classified information with the Conservative leader through what's known as a threat reduction measure, or a TRM. Such a measure can be used in cases when it's deemed appropriate to share classified intelligence with someone who does not possess the necessary security clearances. TRMs are aimed at reducing threats to Canada's security instead of collecting more intelligence to investigate the matter. Michael Chung, for example, and Jenny Kwan got information based on a TRM. Disclosing certain information to individuals who have not undergone the required screenings is one of the ways that can be accomplished, but they can take actions that would minimize the threat. Unlike other federal party leaders, Poilièvre has resisted obtaining a security clearance because he refuses to be, quote, gagged by the information he receives. He has argued that being bound to secrecy, which is required at that level of clearance, would prevent him from discussing his findings with his caucus and Canadians. He has long demanded that he receive the intelligence anyway through the TRM pathway, believing that would allow him to receive critical information that could be publicly shared. But that assumption did not last long. Quote, in subsequent discussions with the government regarding the offered TRM briefing, officials indicated that should Mr. Poilièvre receive the TRM briefing, he would be legally prevented from speaking with anyone other than legal counsel about the briefing and would be able to take action only as expressly authorized by the government, rendering him unable to effectively use any relevant information he received. Poilièvre's spokesperson, Sebastian Skemsky, told the Star in a statement. This is clearly unacceptable and entirely contrary to the government's supposed objective of enabling the person briefed to reduce risk. That is a lie. And I'm going to point you exactly where it is. Because in the previous paragraph, where he says, he would be legally prevented from speaking with anyone other than legal counsel about the briefing. That's the first part. And would be able to take action only as expressly authorized by the government. Rendering, and then he goes, rendering him unable to effectively use any relevant information he received. No. Would be able to take action only as expressly authorized by the government. Now, correct. By the government does not necessarily mean by the Liberal Party of Canada or the government. It could be like the entire government with the security apparatus and the whole thing.
Correct.
Right? Not partisan government, government with a capital G. As in the entire system. So, in the same breath, would be able to take action, rendering unable to effectively use any relevant information. No, you can use the information only as expressly authorized.
Correct. There's somebody in the chat here says the PM can release any information they want to. And it's on the screen right now. It's like, that's not true.
That's not true.
That's not true. They cannot. The PM, the Prime Minister's office, the PMO cannot release whatever they want to. They could be violation of the law, the Secrets Act. They could find themselves charged. They cannot do that. You have been lied to when somebody told you that. That is not factually correct.
It is not the United States.
No, it can't. There are rules and laws and regulations that we need to obey, no matter what your position. Prime Minister's not a king.
Mm-mm.
We have one of those.
We have no pardon power. We have no immunity. Like this is not the thing.
Exactly.
That's a wrong country thing. Same thing as when they're saying lame duck. That's a U.S. thing. That's not a Westminster parliamentary system thing. That's not a thing in our system.
You've been lied to, Robert, is what I'm trying to say. You've been lied to. He can't just release whatever he wants. He is subject to the same laws and rules that everybody in Parliament is.
So the thing with the Conservatives here, it's no longer I'm gagged and won't be able to say what I want to say. Because that was Trudeau's thing. Now it's the justice point. Now it's, oh, well, I wouldn't be able to take any actions because, well, if I'm not allowed to talk to anybody about it, then how do I tell somebody they're fired because of it? You don't. You just don't sign the nomination papers and you say another reason. You shuffle someone out of a critic portfolio that has a subject matter that directly deals with the person with whom they're having these types of conversations so that there's no longer a natural reason for them to be in the same room together having a conversation. And you do it because you can do that at your pleasure. You don't have to tell them. You can take action. But he's now saying that even if I got the information, it's not that I will be gagged. That's still there. But I'd be gagged so much that I wouldn't be able to take any action anyway. A lie. Literally in the same breath as he says, would be able to act only as expressly authorized. I would not be able to act. So if I'm not able to act outside the rules, then I can't take action, is what he's saying. Imagine that. I want to reserve the right to share this information, which would harm Canada. And if I can't take action that would be outside what is expressly authorized, which would harm Canada, then I don't want to know. Everything comes back to making the decision that harms Canada for this guy. On the day she releases the report and points to him and says, you need to get to this, he says, no, I still insist on harming Canada. F you. Justice.
Because he doesn't care. He doesn't care. That's what I keep trying to tell people. He does not care. If it doesn't benefit him, he won't do it. And again, Robert, you're incorrect. I know the Prime Minister can release whatever he wants to. I work for the Solicitor General and he can't. No, he cannot. He is bound to the same Secrecy Act as any other citizen. He cannot do that. He's the Prime Minister, not the President. He is bound to the rules and regulations set forth in the NSICOP and the Secrets Act. He cannot do that. You have been misinformed. I'm not trying to be a hard ass here, but you're wrong. The whole point of this program is to get the truth and the facts to the public that get lied to on the daily. We tell you the truth. And the truth is, he can't do that. He can't. He's never been able to. He's bound to the same rules, regulations of every citizen. He's not a king. He's a prime minister. His position is not elected. We don't elect a prime minister. We never have. We elect a parliament. The party with the most seats can form government. The leader of that party, if they so choose, can assume the position of prime minister. But they don't have to. There's your basic civics lesson for today.
Yeah, indeed. So, yeah, I mean, and back in the day here, when we say he's being gagged here, this is Richard Fadden, former CSIS director. Just because you have a security clearance doesn't mean you have to become a Carthusian monk and never speak.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. He also said that Poilievre could choose to be briefed only on issues affecting his own party if he wanted to create a buffer, ensuring he could criticize the government on foreign interference. That's an option he also has decided not to take.
Yeah, he chose not to. He said no. And James is asking a question here. He says, Paul Douglas, can't any MP say whatever they want in the House and receive blanket immunity? I'm not so sure about that when it comes to violation of the Secrets Act. I don't think they can get away with that. I think they would be arrested the moment they stepped outside of the House of Commons. I could be incorrect.
I'm
not
not sure.
a legal scholar, so I don't know.
I would say maybe so, because immunity is total.
Yeah.
I've never heard of immunity except for in this case.
Okay,
so
but so
possible, but would you be? What relations would you blow up?
Well,
In
this is the
terms
thing.
of international stuff, if you did that, right?
From PNC Bio says, James, parliamentary privilege does not supersede national security.
Okay, good.
Yes, in general, they have the ability
Yes.
to say pretty much any old shit.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Thank you, PNC. That makes sense to me.
So this is what I'm not sure if that's a loophole, just like the prime minister can get to see top security clearance without ever having been cleared personally, just by right. That needs to be closed. So it could be, again, because Westminster parliamentary system works a lot on conventions and traditions and precedent that's been built over a long time. Right. It could very well be that, yes, you have immunity for everything except national security because it supersedes everything. Or it could just be national security supersedes everything. And even though you do have blanket immunity, even though you can, doesn't mean you should. One of the things. Kind of thing. So I don't know which one it is.
Mr. Jim points out something important here. The rules of parliamentary privilege were made long before there were video cameras in the House. We might need to update some of those parliamentary privilege rules because they get abused regularly. When we have parliamentarians that knowingly lie in the House of Commons to get their social media clip, as evidenced by what former Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole stated. You cannot rule by social media, but they're using it to sway people.
Now, here I have in another article, it's from a while back, but why doesn't the government release the names? Poilièvre and the Conservatives have been calling on Trudeau to release the names of allegedly compromised parliamentarians. They repeated that demand on Wednesday. This is from a while ago. But law enforcement and national security agencies have been clear on this point. Sharing any classified information is a crime. Quote, anyone who reveals classified information is subject to the law equally and obviously. In this case, those names are classified at this time, and to reveal them publicly would be a criminal offense, RCMP Deputy Commissioner Mark Flynn told MPs on the Public Accounts Committee in June. When CBC News later asked Flynn whether the names could be released in the House of Commons, where MPs enjoy certain legal protections, he suggested that could be a legal gray area. That's a question that should be asked due to the complexities of parliamentary privilege of a legal expert, Flynn said. So, yeah, it's not clear. We'd have to find a constitutional expert or a national security expert and actually ask that specific question, because it does not seem to be clear. That's why I'm saying it could, just because the rules are so old, it could be such a thing that the way that the rules are structured would actually allow for it. But
Indeed.
It's still a very, 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 very bad idea. So, yeah. Unfortunately, I'm so sorry. I cannot give you a completely 100% clear answer on that one. That's the best I can get. So outside of the House, absolutely not. Inside of the House, a legal gray area as far as someone within the RCMP. Let's see, what was his position again? Deputy Commissioner of the RCMP. So, I mean, if the Deputy Commissioner of the RCMP isn't even clear on that, that's gray indeed. It's a legal area. So, yeah. So Pierre is being singled out by the justice as saying you need to get your clearance. He's not going to get it, even though the Prime Minister made all the arrangements to get some very, 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 very special clearance just for him. Okay, I do not see this, Mr. Grizzly.
It's Pierre Poilievre, a Theory cartoon. It says, I say no to the elites and gatekeepers. Present company accepted a great Conservative Party overload as he bows down and kisses the ring of Stephen Harper.
Who seems to be looking at him like, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah. Literally like, what's up? What's up, buttercup?
Yeah, really. So now here's there's more things here that are going on as well, because this is just, her overall summary and that type of stuff. But if you're listening to some of the analysis and you're going more into the report, now I haven't had a chance to go into 856 pages, right? Into all of it. But one of the people that was most affected by this was MP Han Dong. Right? He was booted from caucus. He's sitting as an independent right now. He's got some legal action. His name was dragged through the mud. Well, Skippy got thrown under the bus. Well, I wouldn't say thrown under the bus by the justice because that's not her thing. But she highlighted some things that put a spotlight on him. Let's just put it that way. Well, journalists are not bound by the same standards of decorum.
Correct.
As a former justice or justice that's leading a public inquiry in service of the nation. And well, Fife the Knife really got his knife thing yesterday. He got his slice on and made a bit of an apple pie. Last night, sliced some apples and baked them. Number one, about Han Dong, Bob makes a point of saying that the report pretty much fully exonerates Liberal MP Han Dong, and that Global is probably going to be writing him a big check.
Yes, that's long been anticipated.
Because remember, at the beginning of this, the Globe and Mail was sort of participating in that, and then came a certain piece, and then the Globe and Mail said, no, we're out.
We're out. Wasn't me.
Right?
We're out.
So now there's a little bit of self-serving stuff from Bob Fife, because if I'm not mistaken, Bob Fife was somewhat involved in the original articles.
Yeah.
Somehow, and then come out. So it's like, oh yeah, this pretty much fully exonerates Han Dong. I'm not going to mention that we were involved in this in any way, shape, or form at the beginning, and that we bowed out when we realized, woo. But yeah, Global's probably going to have to write him a big check, and depending on how he filed those things, I have a feeling that Global may not be the only entity from which he'll be receiving a check. There might be certain individuals who I will not name, from whom he might be receiving a check, depending on how legal things are filed, because now he has a public inquiry report to include as evidence.
So interesting.
Can't wait to see what that one yields. But that will be a story that will develop. But Bob Fife then continued and literally checked Pierre into the boards with, quote, I imagine the government is going to come out and say they're going to try to bring in some of these recommendations. I hope so. Which would mean Parliament would have to sit without an immediate confidence vote. And we have some of the people in the pundit class, like Bob Fife, were starting to write articles about how government and Parliament needs to reconvene, and all these parties better not make the government fall, because he hopes that they come back to try to bring in some of these recommendations, especially the ones that require some legislation that Justice Hogue recommended.
Oh,
Two.
Look at this shit.
Hold on.
No, this
Hold on.
goes to
Two.
it.
Okay.
Laurie Goldstein, given that the Hogue inquiry has found
yes.
no member of Parliament engaged in treason, it means that the many months of defamatory nonsense spread by Liberal MPs that Pierre Poilievre wouldn't agree to getting a security clearance because he was afraid of what it wouldn't cover was BS.
No.
Did you read the report? She recommended that all party leaders get security clearance.
Yeah. Yeah. And two, where Bob Fife smashes Skippy into the boards. So he starts with, I imagine the government is going to come out and say they're going to try to bring in some of these recommendations. I hope so. And I hope Mr. Poilievre will show some real leadership and say that he will get a national security clearance so he can hear about some of the apparently troubling intelligence that was raised about some Conservative Party members. Bob Fife. So you got Justice Hogue shoving him into a corner one way. You got Bob Fife shoving him into a corner another way. And he's still saying he's not going to do it. And his reason this time is, well, I wouldn't be able to take action on it anyway. Which is a lie. Just like I would be gagged was also a lie. And we know that because Elizabeth May and Jagmeet Singh sure had a lot to say after they read it. Way more than he did because he didn't read it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. Other things that you need to know. The report has plenty of criticism, of course, for national security agencies. A good chunk of the 51 recommendations have to do with all the stuff. And it's all the usual stuff when it comes to these things, right? In the United States, when there was 9/11, when we had the attack on the Hill, during the convoy, poor communication, unclear lines of responsibility, poor follow-up. It's been 30, 40 years of poor follow-up and can you get it together? Had David Wallace respond to that one saying, well, it's their job to cover things up. So, it seems with the government, when she also had praise and criticism for the government in terms of the actions that had been taken, seemed to have been good actions, and the response seems to be good and serious. However, when it comes to communicating within each other and with the public in particular, right, the government is a terrible communicator. We have way too much. Things are overclassified. Things are not shared the right way. There's no way we should have learned this type of stuff from the media. The government should have been telling us, keeping us informed of that. So there needs to be some type of response that the critique seems to be a lack of a national security culture in government and as well in Canadian society. We just don't think of it. We're too comfortable feeling too safe. Gee, that must suck. What a tyrannical dictatorship we live in. We're too comfortable feeling too safe that we don't even have a national security culture. Come on, man. So a lot of this seems to be the result of, again, systemic issues and not any particular political ill will. But there are stuff like files going up that people should see this, and then it just lands on someone's desk and it doesn't go anywhere because nobody calls like 3 days later and says, hey, that thing I sent you, did so and so see it yet? Or in the case of the national security advisor Jody Thomas, when she mentioned, well, there was a change in the office and there was one person coming out, one person coming in. During the change time, there were things that piled up and it just sort of kind of stayed on the bottom of the pile and nobody saw it. So you need better tracking systems. Sometimes they can't tell who read what information. It's like, I remember as a kid, as a library, when I went to the library, you had this little library card and you put your name, you put everybody, you could tell everybody who read it. Back to 10 years ago. So apparently there's not these types of things. And it makes me wonder why there are not these types of things, because it seems like they should be pretty standard when you have them, but apparently they're not there. So all that needs to be cleaned up. And apparently it wasn't cleaned up after 9/11. It wasn't cleaned up after the attacks on the Hill. When they all said that we need to work together and reduce the silos and share better information. So I don't know what's going on there. But again, sort of like the government withheld this, the government did that. She's like, no, it's just dumb processes, incomplete processes, imperfect processes. So, but that definitely needs to be cleaned up, no doubt there. Yeah. So Skippy's not going to. It seems that he's been asked. He's still not going to be helpful. I don't know what's next in this type of sense. I would assume that the government is going to take some actions. And the government did. One of the interesting things that the government did, and I will send you a link here, Mr. Grizzly, is that I was watching originally on CPAC, and while the broadcast was playing, so Justice Hogue made her comments, and then we came back, and then the two panelists that were there were giving some analysis. Well, they came out, and the government had already announced certain things that they were going to do in response to this. Now, the government, I'm sure, was planning some of these things. Now, you also have to remember, kids and cubs, that parallel to this, well, not parallel to this, but on the side to this, the Commissioner of Elections, right, has a certain number of recommendations as well, right? And they sort of dovetail. Some of them dovetail and they go together. Mr. Grizzly, I just sent you something. There's a, if you can bring it to timestamp, hold on, I will find it to you, 55:34, around there. So this was about an hour show. It includes about the 25 minutes of Justice Hogue. So this came out very quickly after she made her statement, probably before any other party leader was able to make a statement. So this was very good communications from the Liberals, because before any party leader could come and say, well, they're not doing anything, or they need to respond or whatnot, they came out and they said, we got this. So here are three things, and I want you, it's going to be the host that's going to be reading it, but you see Bob Fife and Joël Denis Bellavance there. They're on a screen. I want you to look at them, because once some of these things are read, I want you to look at the reactions on their faces for you to get an idea of how good or bad this is.
Concrete actions, the words you are using. And as you say that, I want to read right now. This is a statement that we're getting from Ruby Sahota, the Minister for Democratic Institutions, as well as David McGuinty, the Minister for Public Safety, in a statement that essentially thanks Justice Hogue for the work she has done and for this final report on the public inquiry into foreign interference. They also say, quote, today the government is taking further action to protect our election integrity with the following investments. $44 million starting in 2025-26 and $9.8 million ongoing for the Office of the Chief Electoral Officer to ensure a sufficient investigation capacity to protect against persistent threats to the electoral process, such as foreign interference and disinformation. $27.5 million starting in 2025-26 with a temporary increase of $2 million in 2025-26 for the Canadian Heritage's Digital Citizen Initiative to fund projects that build citizen resilience against online disinformation, and $5.95 million starting in 24-25 for Global Affair Canada's Rapid Response Mechanism to bolster its capacity to monitor and strengthen defenses of the Canadian open source information ecosystem and keep Canadians informed of possible foreign interference during the election. So immediately we're seeing a response here from government. Of course, they've had time to plan this, knowing that something was going to come out today. But multiple millions of dollars here.
$73.5 million for mostly for some of the systems that are already in action. The Rapid Response Mechanism reports within Global Affairs on foreign interference activities that they detect online, and then there's also some technical support through the Digital Center, or the Digital Citizen Initiative. But what's interesting, the bulk of it, $44 million going to the Office of the Chief Electoral Officer to boost their investigative capacity. That means to detect it, to go out and perhaps and see and investigate if there are scurrilous activities going on the ground in ridings, perhaps. And I'm interested in that because it's not just that. I mean, I think with some of the changes that the government made in terms of the foreign interference law, perhaps that'll be a more robust response. I think there are probably still, though, recommendations from Madame Hogue that the government will have to act on. And today we only have a commitment for them to review them, and this will guide our further action. So I think that, questions still have to be asked, just how far they're prepared to go to lift the veil on this thing.
Lift the veil, as you say, but immediate action here. And this is important, Bob, because we are not only now in the midst of a leadership review, or leadership race, rather, for the Liberal Party, also within weeks, months of another federal campaign. How important is this reaction from the Trudeau government at this point?
Oh, it's very important, and we need to see some more action. All the other recommendations dealing with disinformation and AI and all that stuff that's being used that we expect will become pretty predominant during the general election campaign. We now know, thanks to this public inquiry, the extent of how states use disinformation campaigns to elect or defeat people that they don't like, or elect somebody they think might be friendlier to them. And, you know, this is something we never got from the report from former Governor General David Johnston, and that's why I really do believe that judicial and public inquiries are always the best way to go when you have serious issues confronting the country and looking for solutions. I mean, you know, we saw 150 witnesses, 35 days of testimony, the highest bureaucrats in the country, our spy agencies, the Prime Minister, all of these people testifying about how they've dealt with and the shortcomings of dealing with foreign interference. That would not have happened if we did not have a public inquiry headed by a judge. And, you know, I say to her, hats off to her for doing a really excellent job here.
Yeah, well, let's pick up on that. But, sorry, JD, go ahead.
I would add to what Bob is saying. I think this was like, as I said, a very healthy exercise, and I would argue that maybe it should be done on a regular basis, maybe every 7 years, to look at whether our institutions are resilient enough and our laws are adapted to a continuing, evolving threat, which is foreign interference, as Justice Marie-Josée Hogue put it in her report. So it should be like we review election acts every time there's an election on a regular basis. I think maybe this should be done, an exercise that should be done on a regular basis. Maybe not every 5 years, but at least on a regular basis.
A regular basis, as you say. You know, I've got about 5 minutes.
All right. There you go, Mr. Grizzly. So you noticed when they announced that, in particular, the $44 million starting in 2025-2026 and $9.8 million ongoing for the Office of the Chief Electoral Officer to ensure a sophisticated investigation capacity to protect against persistent threats to the electoral process, such as foreign interference and disinformation. You saw both of their heads go,
Yeah.
Yes,
Oh,
yes,
yeah,
that's good.
This is some good news. This is a good news day.
Right? So you have those three things, and those three things I want to bring to your attention, right? Chief Electoral Officer, to ensure that we're investigating for Canadian Heritage Digital Citizen Initiative to fund projects to build citizen resilience against online disinformation. And then for Global Affairs Canada, rapid response mechanism to bolster the capacity to monitor and strengthen defenses of the Canadian open source information ecosystem and keep Canadians informed of possible foreign interference during the election. You'll remember a while ago, we had MP Mark Gerritsen on, and we had a conversation with him, and it was not a typical conversation because I was asking about the government stuff, but I had a lot of focus on what is the government doing to ensure that we as Canadians have our right to cast a fully informed vote maintained. What are we doing with civics? What are we doing to counter disinformation? This is why I was asking. Justice Hogue said that the biggest threat is disinformation.
Yes.
And misinformation.
Which is the reason we started this.
Or
this
just
is one of the
holding back.
reasons. Yes.
Yeah. Or withholding information, like not showing up for a debate. Just withholding. But things that actively get people who are elected to serve you, who work for you, who you pay for, whose mandate and his duty is to be honorable in service to you. And the number one thing in a democracy is you do not get in the way of a voter's right to interfere. You do not get interfere with a voter's right to be able to cast the most informed vote they can. That is directly counter to the best interests of the nation. That is not honorable behavior. We do not elect representatives to lie to us about what the law allows and does not allow, what the Constitution does and does not permit.
Exactly.
We do not elect people to represent us to then pit us against each other. That's not what they are supposed to be doing. So any measure, and there needs to be a whole lot more. We need some like Canadian heritage minutes, but based on civics.
Oh,
for example.
please,
Like, just
please.
you got like we need to have money that the federal government is going to give to provincial governments that will want to do it for education programs like they have in Finland to build media awareness and critical thinking, media literacy. We need those things, right? In addition to those three measures, according to the press release, moreover, with the passage of Bill C-70, which recently happened, an act respecting countering foreign interference, we are taking significant steps to bolster our defenses against new and insidious forms of foreign meddling. This legislation criminalizes interference activities, enhances information sharing capabilities, and establishes a foreign influence transparency registry. Additionally, the government's newly published mandate letter for the National Security and Intelligence Advisor strengthens coordination across Canada's national security and intelligence agencies, ensuring a unified response to these growing challenges. Canadians' trust in our democratic processes is an essential part of our Canadian identity. In a world where the threat of foreign interference is becoming increasingly pervasive, the Government of Canada is resolute in its commitment to defending that trust and protecting our democracy for generations to come. Now, along with that, in terms of the responses, we talked about Ruby Sahota in that clip, who is the new minister for democratic institutions, but also David McGuinty, who used to be, I think it was the chair of NSICOP, and then was removed from that to take his position as the Minister of Public Safety in the most recent shuffle.
Okay.
And they issued the following statement on, we extend our gratitude to Commissioner Hogue and her team for their work in producing the Commission's final report. The establishment of this public inquiry followed extensive consultation with all political parties who unanimously agreed to the terms of reference and the appointment of the Commissioner. Over the past year and a half, the Commission reviewed thousands of classified documents, including an unprecedented volume of cabinet confidences, heard countless hours of testimony, and engaged with senior government officials, political leaders, intelligence experts, diaspora communities, and academics. This comprehensive examination of the threat landscape will significantly enhance Canada's capacity to detect, deter, and respond to the evolving dangers of foreign interference in our democratic processes. The Government of Canada welcomes the final report's findings, which reaffirmed that the 2019 and 2021 federal elections were free and fair. However, it is clear that our democracy faces a continuous and escalating threat from foreign actors who seek to undermine our sovereignty and destabilize our institutions. These are almost word for word what Justice Hogue is saying here and there. So I think she might have lifted some quotes. As Commissioner Hogue emphasized, safeguarding Canadians' trust in our democratic institutions is paramount. The government will carefully review the final report's findings and recommendations, and they must guide the government's ongoing efforts to strengthen Canada's defenses against foreign interference. Democracies around the world are confronting unprecedented threats to their electoral integrity, and Canada is no exception. While our country has long had robust measures to protect our democracy, we must continue adapting to the evolving threat. This inquiry has shed light on our government's historic efforts to protect Canada from this landscape. This includes initiatives such as the Critical Election Incident Public Protocol, the Security and Intelligence Threats to Elections Task Force, called SITE, if you hear that, SITE, the G7 Rapid Response Mechanism, and others, all designed to safeguard future elections from both emerging and entrenched threats. And then there was the rest of the announcements that came in that we started with. So that is the official, not response of the government to what they are going to do with this, even though there are some things, but the acknowledgement that they're receiving the report. There will probably be more from the government in days to come, especially if they're looking at the recommendations and they're saying, okay, of these 21, these ones require legislation. Here's a bill. Right? Now, when it comes to the other leaders, Yves-François Blanchet, pretty much, yeah, I don't care. Now, he has the luxury of that in the sense that his party is nowhere named in the report. They were not a target. They were not involved in any way. They have no interest. So he can take a not my circus, not my monkeys.
Right.
I don't think it's particularly wise, because anything foreign interference that can affect Canada, let's say there was a nation out there that wanted to influence in a certain way to get something in Quebec and wanted to sow that division among us. So even though Quebec is no member of the BQ specifically was a target in any way, shape, or form, or was part of it, that doesn't mean that the province of Quebec and the interests of Quebec can't be invested by somebody else being successful doing something somewhere else in Canada. Right? So I'm surprised that Monsieur Blanchette is so hands-off, but it might be a gamble with given that Justice Hogue said that it's like nowhere near pervasive and it's nowhere near the norm and it's still like extraordinary when it happens and marginal and all that kind of stuff. Maybe if the threat was bigger, he would have a different stance. The federal government, of course, the typical one, right? We received the recommendations. Thank you for the report. We'll look at them, we'll get back. Interestingly, not a we are going to implement all the recommendations right away. Sometimes you get that. That was not the case in this one. That could have something to do just with the timelines that they have. Some of them are going to require more time than until the next election. So they cannot actually implement them. So they can't, saying that they would commit to do it would pretty much be an empty statement. But whether or not they're going to comb through them and look at the stuff that can be done now and then present some type of legislative package. Maybe couple the election stuff into it so that we can have the extended voting, put it all in one bill. Like the NDP wanted to sweeten the pot. Try it again, pass it quickly. Bills can pass quickly if they needed to. So there's that. Jagmeet Singh had his response yesterday, and we're getting a little long here, so I won't show it today, but we will go into it. But it is typically unclear. Now, he seems to be indicating that he is open to working with the government, not taking down the government at the first available opportunity now that things have changed. Called it, by the way. But won't go as far as saying it. So he's sort of like, well, if there's something that we'll look at it, but the government hasn't presented us with the package yet and stuff like that, so there's nothing to respond to now. It's almost like Pierre was like this, well, it's like the dental program doesn't exist yet. It's like, well, yes, because you just approved it. Can you give time for some dentists to sign on and for the insurance company to like set its computer system up and then for people to actually register before you say it hasn't helped anyone? Maybe. So we just got the report. It's like if the government already had a bill prepared, it wouldn't be based on the report, Mr. Singh. Now, Mr. Singh is calling for an all sort of meeting, party meeting like happened at the time of COVID. Now, Mr. Singh is also mixing tariff response into this as well, right? The government is looking at a multi-million-dollar package to help individuals and corporations in case tariffs come through. I think it was you, Mr. Grizzly, that mentioned yesterday that they're looking like a CERB type thing, maybe, to get people through this particular period.
I have a thing here I'm going to put on the screen. Just bear with me for a sec while I locate it. There is a program being prepared. This is direct from the PMO. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has said the federal government will be there to help affected workers and businesses get through the economic fallout of Trump's threatened trade war. To that end, Ottawa is preparing a multi-billion-dollar aid package to shore up the economy, if necessary, government sources told CBC News. The government hasn't settled on just how much financial support could be made available, given there are still many uncertainties, the sources said. And what would Pierre Poilievre do if he was in power? I'm wondering what would he have done? Would he have just
those are government social programs? We don't believe in those.
We'll just give you a tax cut.
Yep, that's all you need. Tax cuts fix everything.
How's a tax cut going to help me when I don't have any income?
Shh, no thinking required. Tax cuts fix everything. Shh.
No, sorry. Well, they do for the wealthy.
Less this, more this. Shh. No tax cuts. Tax cuts fix everything. Shh. Don't ask too many questions. Shh.
In breaking news, the Atlantic Ocean has been renamed England's Pond. England renames the Atlantic Ocean England's Pond.
Oh, delightful. Percival will be quite happy with that.
Next, they will be insisting that we speak English.
Oh my God, love it. So we got so Mr. Singh seems to be, like I said, open, but doesn't want to, will not say when directly asked. Yes, but in order for this to happen, sir, you have to commit in advance to not taking down the government at the first opportunity, because this could be say, oh yes, we'd be willing to help call back the parliament, bait and switch, boom, take the government down, right? Are you willing to offer the Canadian public assurances that you will be a cooperative partner, because you've tended to be a little bit of a punk in this relationship? We've noticed over the last 2 years that your word doesn't mean much. So would you commit? Because, and he will not commit. Because now in this press conference, he's also saying things like, well, if Parliament had been open all this time, we could have been dealing with this. It's like, that's bullshit, you dumbass, because you said so many times that you're going to take down the government at the first opportunity.
Yeah.
And you were collaborating with the Conservatives. You were in cahoots with the Conservatives and making sure that nothing was passing. So that's what I mean. Jagmeet Singh can't stand in front of a camera today and say, well, gee, if only Parliament had been working all along, we would be able to pass these measures, when there was no measures being passed in Parliament while you were there and you were threatening to take down the government. It's like,
well, they're relying on us being stupid and having no memory.
Right.
And being unable to use a computer to look up things on the interwebs.
Yes. So Pierre is definitely going to be unhelpful, because he's not going to get a security clearance. He definitely wants the government to come down. The Bloc has no F's to give, particularly since Jagmeet Singh is in a corner anyway. So they get, if they're first out of the gate saying, we're not going to help, it puts all the pressure on Mr. Singh. And Mr. Singh will not tell Canadians, NDP voters, if you're listening right now, if you are nervous, if you're stressed, if you want some clarity, some anxiety, you have some anxiety, you want it relieved, like this, do not look to the leader of the NDP to do that for you, because the statesman thing to do yesterday would have been to say, I said this, but Justice Hogue said that these are things that need to be done before the next election. I definitely called for this inquiry. I'm telling you, I pushed for it. The Liberals didn't want it, but we pushed for it, and then we got it. Because, well, now you got the inquiry, and now you got the recommendations.
Yeah.
And we have an election coming up. Would you allow Parliament to function like a normal body and institution that we're not supposed to be trying to take down and destroy, as Justice Hogue said, particularly with disinformation or misinformation? Sir, the camera's also snapped to you on that one. Would you give Canadians clarity and peace of mind by letting them know that, yes, this is so important that we will definitely take our partisan thing and to put it aside for a couple of weeks or whatever, so that we can get measures for Canadians in case of terrorist hits and to secure our elections?
I have to go.
That's an easy thing to say. Yeah, that's an easy thing to say.
If you want to continue on, by all means go. So I got to take the dog out. She's freaking right now. I can hear her whining and crying right behind me. So I do have to go.
Okay.
I'll see you all later, and
right.
Have a good one.
So, Mr. Singh is opening the door. Now, I don't know if this is a cautious thing. He just wants to open the door a little bit, not go all the way, so he doesn't have everybody say, oh, you flip-flopped or whatnot. But if you're not going to flip-flop for national security, and if you're not going to flip-flop to keep people whole when a country south of us is threatening, not economic ruin, but definitely economic pain, then what's your use as an elected official? What purpose do you serve? So, but he couldn't give clarity. He's still playing that, oh, maybe not game. Justin is terrible, but maybe we'll... Just give us some peace of mind, sir. Just give us some peace of mind. It's an easy line to say these things are just too important. They're vital. They're foundational. So yes, for these, we can make an exception, and we are very sure that our membership and that Canadians would understand. That fair-minded, reasonable Canadians would understand why we're doing this. This is not a flip-flop. This is adapting to new information, and information that is critical. That's it. Doesn't have to be more than that. And again, you can take the statesman mantle and then run on that, but he just cannot seem to do that. Jagmeet Singh is that guy in that proverbial joke who's in the water, who lets the cruise ship go by, lets the motor go by, lets the rowboat go by. But he also lets the raft and the dinghy and the flotation device go by as well. And the door. Ugh. It's like, I understand you need to differentiate yourself from the Liberals. But if this is a Team Canada thing, there are times we're being very clear. Yes, I stand with the nation and I will do what I need to do. Even if that means reversing myself on something I said before. I will gladly take the hit to ensure that Canadians have peace of mind that the next elections are safe and fair. That's not a stretch. There's nothing to be lost in terms of political capital for doing that. I just don't know why he can't do it. By doing it this way, he doesn't get the gain. He doesn't get the win from saying, yes, he will definitely do it. And he doesn't get, it's just this mushy middle thing again, where he doesn't take a position. And I understand it's this whole tough thing. Well, it's up to the government to present a package and bring us all together. And like, he's proposing the entire process, right? Like we did for COVID, bring everybody together. So he knows what he wants. He knows how he wants it done. He's suggesting how it should be done, but he's not saying, if it's done, then you got me. I will be a team player again. And I don't understand that at all. The other leader mentioning is Elizabeth May here. And the reason I'm mentioning her is that Rachel Gilmore was in the lockup for the thing. And I guess Miss May was there or around. And even though there hasn't been an official response from Miss May that I can tell, she was asked a question by Rachel, and Mr. Grizzly's there, so I can't show you the clip, but however, I will tell you what it is that she did say. You know how I've been saying we need to pass a law making it mandatory that Skippy get his security clearance? Well, Elizabeth May has a take on things here with regard to disinformation that I also think, yeah, let's make this a law too. So, Rachel Gilmore's there, asking. She says in the tweet that she presents this in, Elizabeth May isn't holding back about Elon Musk. She said he's been doing, quote, a parade around the world as emperor of all with his buddy Trump. I asked her about the emphasis on the threat of disinformation in the foreign interference report. So Rachel Gilmore's talking. Help address that issue, especially when it's as she said, sorry, threat to democracy. And then Elizabeth May says, watching Elon Musk parade around the world as new emperor of all, along with his buddy Donald Trump, I am deeply concerned for the next election in Canada. I think Musk interfering in Germany's elections on this side of the far-right parties that want to play footsie with Nazis and say, we don't have to feel guilty about our past on International Day of Holocaust Remembrance. This is pretty offensive stuff. Our solution in the Green Party is we, as Canadians, and our government should say, there's no such thing as a platform. You are a publisher. And Meta, Twitter, X, all of them would have to abide by the jurisprudence of hundreds of years of publishers' responsibility for what they publish. An anonymous, rule-free world in which social media operates could end simply, quickly. But of course, Parliament would have to be in session to say in Canada that we don't recognize something called a platform. You've invented this term for yourselves so that you can as profiteering national corporations interfere in our lives and harvest our lives to make money for yourself, threatening our democracy, threatening our journalism. So you are publishers, and we are not going to censor what you publish. But if someone wants to sue you, you will be responsible for the words you published, regardless of whether it comes from a foreign bot or a Canadian citizen. The publisher is responsible for what they publish, and that would really clean up the sewer of social media. I am down. Let's fucking go. Do it. Pass a law. There's no such thing as a platform. You're publishers. Let's do it now. I'm good with it. Sign me up. So there's a lot of things that could go in a bill, such as that. And under a new Liberal leader, which would be the case when such a bill is tabled, especially if the government is the one that decides to go first to table it, that, and I mean, let's put it this way. If Pierre Poilievre is not going to respond to a recommendation by the actual justice of the inquirer he so screamed for, that he should get a security clearance, then what are the odds that he's going to be in favor of this bill to protect our democracy? And that will certainly put him in an interesting pickle prior to an election call that he claims he wants, as his numbers are tanking, as there's someone waiting in the wings, one or two someones, depending on who is chosen, who have tons of international experience and can speak about this like an adult in the room, rather than just stringing bits of phrases together to make it sound like you're talking about a topic and you know what you're talking about. Time is not Skippy's friend. And now you have the justice, and you have the dean of the Canadian Political Press Corps, all saying he should get it. You have everybody, former national security, former directors of CISA, saying there is no reason whatsoever not to get this than other than wanting to run your mouth. To comment, probably salaciously, about the government. There is no good reason for him to not get it. It's the consensus. And he still won't. So, again, pardon my language, but corner the fucker. Table some type of law. And then watch him oppose it. And have to explain it. I'm down with that. Let's make platforms publishers. How long have these social media platforms been around? How long have we allowed them to run on the honor system and self-regulation? They won't do it. They just won't do it. And when people just won't do it, then you make them. Well, not people, I should say corporations. You make them. When they will not act in the public interest, you make them. Regulation. Different status under the law. Miss May's got a point here. It would clean stuff up pretty darn fast. Much like when the whole online porn industry was required to have programs for like non-violent material and things that didn't get to kids, and now, security verifications and stuff like that. They had been given enough time. They didn't do it on their own. Wasn't in their financial interest. So regulation had to come down. Same thing here. We have to do something We have to do something, and as the justice said, disinformation is the most pervasive, it's the most dangerous threat, and it's the one with which we have the most limited means to respond. Treat them like publishers is a means that we have, and that would work very well. So I'm very, very interested in seeing what is going to be tabled. I do not foresee that the Liberals are going to pass on the opportunity to table some type of bill soon after March 9th. If not table, because they won't be able to table in the House, but actually like talk about it out loud and say, hey, we have the outlines of a bill, and start talking about the elements that will be in it and that type of stuff. Remember, once the Parliament's not supposed to reconvene, I believe, until March 29th, but the vote will be March 9th. So whoever the new leader is will have some time in between there to pick a cabinet and choose a couple of policies, write a throne speech, maybe have those meetings that Mr. Singh said, talked about with all the leaders of the other parties, if the prime minister doesn't have them beforehand, to start building the basis, which he can hand on to the new leader, who will adapt it as they wish, but start the groundwork of getting it done. So there's a lot of things that'll be able to come out of this, and lots of opportunities. But at the moment, it again, it looks like we have a conservative government and a conservative leader who's following the same playbook that he did when the prime minister announced that he was going to step aside, and when then President-elect Donald Trump was starting to muse aloud about annexation via economic force. He goes into hiding. He has no response. He's nowhere to be found on a critical day. Yes, and judging by the fact that he is not taking the justice's recommendation, once again showing us that he cannot pivot, and that he has one political strategy and has not been able to change it. He's nails in the floorboard. As the world is changing, the world is passing him by, the moment is passing him by, but he's got nothing else in his toolbox. He's got nothing else in his bag of tricks. It's still carbon tax. It's still everything is Justin Trudeau. It's still, I will not get my security clearance because Justin's trying to gag me. No pivot. No plan B. No B game. Nothing. This is very concerning. This is extremely concerning. And whether it's an inability to pivot because he just does not have the ability, or it's an inability to pivot because his hands are somehow tied by promises that he has made that we're not privy to, it's concerning. Because if you haven't noticed, the guy south of us zigs and zags and can't walk or talk in a straight line. So being fleet of foot and able to adapt would be an extremely important quality to have in the next leader of this country. And he's not that. He's not that. He doesn't have it. Now, the other thing, and the final thing, I think would be the final thing about the NSICOP report, about this, the foreign interference report, has to do with the way the NSICOP report was presented to us. Justice Hogue seemed to very, very seriously question the competence of parliamentarians on NSICOP to understand the material they see, as well as to distinguish that which is important for national security versus that which is potentially politically salacious. That report, for a while, was all that we had, and it very much created the impression that there were traitors among us. And it was spun, very much overblown, particularly by the by the Conservative Party of Canada, and a little bit by the NDP. Turns out there wasn't that much to be panicked about in that sense. But for months and months and months, that's all we talked about. Release the names. Who are the traitors? Why won't Trudeau just release the names? Make it all go away. But it seems that was a report written by the members of NSICOP who did have access to some of that, to that information. So either this information was shared with them and they didn't pull from that information that which was actually vitally important for national security. Either they're in there because they're politicians and they're thinking about politicians. Oh, okay, well, what can damage us politically? And they focused on that. So if they're talking about what can damage politicians politically, well, it's the fact that some of them may have been engaged, right? And not the overall impact on national security. So the body, NSICOP is a good body, but there maybe needs to be some minimum criteria required of the people the parties are going to select to put on that committee, and there might need to be a better intake process in that committee to make sure that parliamentarians are actually looking at this information with the correct lens, where they have to take off their partisan political MP glasses, and then they need to put on I've been privy to some very, 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 very secret information that nobody else is, and I have a duty to my nation to do with this and nothing else. While I'm in this room with these people wearing these glasses, I behave in this way. So it is concerning that the people now they did get David McGuinty did make a point that they did get things right in that there was no huge threat and that the two elections were fine and all that kind of stuff. Yes. But how they interpreted the intelligence that they received, and remember, not intelligence is actually evidence, really created a situation where, I guess, like I said, the best way we can call it is that there was some type of moral panic. And we were not trusting each other. And it's like, that's not okay. We can't have that. Right? When these types of situations come up, even though there's some people that do want to panic, that's when we need to stop, breathe, and slow everything down so we can think with clarity. So the panic does not help. All right. And I believe that would be everything I had for it. I did see one thing in the chat with regard to Pierre Poilievre and a security gate and not wanting to. I do not think that is from yesterday, just so you know. I looked for stuff and I didn't find anything about that. I did, however, find an article that was a flashback to 2010 when Pierre Poilievre did have an incident of that kind. Let's see, this is from the CBC, posted October 8th, 2010. Poilievre urged to step aside over Hill breach. Opposition Liberals are calling on Conservative MP Pierre Poilievre to step aside as Prime Minister Stephen Harper's parliamentary secretary after his breach of Parliament Hill security triggered an RCMP probe. The RCMP confirmed Poilievre, the MP for the Ottawa area riding of Nepean Carleton, drove through a Parliament Hill screening gate on Tuesday, this is in 2010, without proper clearance or submitting his vehicle to inspection. CTV reported Poilievre became impatient while waiting in another lane at the gate as officers inspected a delivery truck and pressed the entrance button to let himself through the gate. Everyone, including MPs, must clear security checkpoints to gain access to Parliament Hill. RCMP Sergeant Marc Ménard said the breach was reported immediately and deemed not an immediate threat once it was determined an MP passed through the gate. He said the RCMP accepted Poilievre's apology on Thursday and is continuing to work with all MPs and parliamentary staff to, quote, increase awareness levels about security on the Hill. The Conservatives have tried to downplay the incident, but Liberal MP Todd Russell said Poilievre was flouting his safeguards, quote, flouting the safeguards meant to protect the thousands of people who visit and work on Parliament Hill each day. The member pretends to be tough on crime Russell said during Friday's question period in the House of Commons, quote, why does he think the law applies to all Canadians except him? In his response, House Leader John Baird urged parliamentarians to focus on making Canadians safer and getting tougher on criminals and terrorism. Quote, let's focus on the people of Canada's priorities and not these trivial matters, Baird said. Considering the Hill attacks, which I'm not sure happened after or before this, I'm going to guess happened after this. Let's focus on the people of Canada, not let these trivial matters. Someone breaching security on the Hill is not a trivial matter. An MP thinking that the rules don't apply to him is not a trivial matter. And that was in 2010. We're in 2025 now. That thing I keep on saying about Pierre, he has not evolved one bit in 20 years in Parliament. He is the same person. He had total disregard for matters of national security and the safety of others back in 2010 because he got impatient with waiting. And in 2025, he's taking positions that put at risk the national security of Canada and Canadians because he's impatient and too tired of waiting. It's time for an election. He's the same person. Zero evolution. That's hard to do. He's not a leader. He's not competent. He's not putting you first. And he does not have the stuff. He just doesn't. He is not it. And he's proven it again and again and again. All right, kids and cubs. There's a lot more going on in the news. Doug Ford is, went to the Governor General and dissolved Parliament, and there will be an election. He's got some goodies for us and things that he was not able to do over the last 4 years that suddenly he's able to do now. So he picked the shortest election period possible, it seems. So even though he called the election somewhere in January, it's going to take place in February, not even in March. So he's going fast. He's going hard. He is going to fill the space with a whole bunch of stuff. But the little thing that I will touch on from what he said yesterday, because we're hitting on 2 hours and a half, and that's enough for me today. But he posted on Twitter, quote, we're entering a period of unprecedented economic risk and lengthy negotiations against President Trump and with the federal government and other provinces. Responding to this challenge will demand extraordinary action. The need to invest tens of billions of dollars in unplanned spending and tough choices about making Ontario's economy the most competitive place to invest, create jobs, and do business. To protect Ontario, I'm asking people for a strong mandate, a strong, stable 4-year mandate that will outlive and outlast the Trump administration. Really? During this time, I will never stop working for you. I will remain chair of the Council of the Federation, will join my fellow premiers and the Prime Minister for weekly meetings. I will travel to Washington to make Canada's case against tariffs. I will fight to protect Ontario, for our families, for our workers, for our business, for all of us. God, you can just hear the violin music and the swell at the end, right? Okay. Why this is bullshit. Number one, he doesn't negotiate for Canada. He's the Premier of Ontario. Number two, he's got a nifty little Starlink deal with Elon Musk going on that he needs to tidy up somehow. Because you cannot say that Canada is not for sale and be doing business with the first buddy of the guy who threatened economic annexation of the country you live in. You can't. You also weird choice to go into election saying Canada's not for sale, but I believe Ontarians are, with $200 checks, some of which bounced. There's a good sign, eh? You need some competent leadership. I need a new mandate. I can't even get the checks out right. Apparently it didn't affect that many people, but some of them bounced. Became a story. Sometimes a story on the opening day sets the tone for the campaign, Mr. Ford. He wants a mandate now. He says that will outlive and outlast the Trump administration. Okay, so yeah, if he gets elected on the 27th and he's there for 4 years, and then the Trump administration, well, and sometime November, yeah, it outlasts the Trump administration, assuming he goes, by a couple of months. I need to be the premier of Ontario the entire time Trump is there. That's why I need the mandate now. To make sure I'm there for the whole 4 years that he's there. That's why it's important. You got a year and 6 months or however months, the number of months left to go on this one. And if you're doing such a good job, you will get the mandate to continue. But you need to secure all of it now. Sure. This is about us. Sure. Okay. There's a whole problem with that, Doug Ford. You're a terrible negotiator. If your case is that we need you to be there to negotiate for us and to invest tens of billions of dollars in unplanned spending and tough choices about making Ontario's economy the most competitive place to invest, create jobs, and do business, well, we've seen you invest tens of billions of dollars. You didn't do a good job of it. Ontario Science Centre, Service Ontario, the LCBO, we talked about it yesterday, $612 extra million to get out of a contract for no particular reason other than you want it to go now. That SPA, erasing the $1 billion 407 mess. Again, Starlink with the guy, funding the guy who wants to annex us economically. You're a terrible negotiator. Like, you supremely suck at it. I don't understand why anybody in their right mind would want to give you a vote. And the thing I've been saying for days still remains true. You said Team Canada needed to put everything else second. But here you are, putting yourself first. On the eve of the big game, Coach quits and decides he's going to enter contract negotiations. I am not impressed. I'm not impressed. I'm not impressed with the rationale. I'm not impressed with the packaging. I'm not impressed with the framing. Hopefully, Ontarians will see through it. And given that he's not personally popular, hopefully that will be enough. Hopefully the little gray hat won't save him. But this again, Doug Ford is working us. Doug Ford is just simply working us here. All right, kids and cubs, that's the end of this episode of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. We hope that you love listening to us because we love making this for you. Remember, sharing is caring and word of mouth is priceless. And you've got the mouths from which we want the words to come. So please tell your peeps and poops all about us. We really appreciate it when you do. Now, if you would like to help us, kids and cubs, well, let's say, for example, by not wanting to miss an episode whatsoever when it comes down to you in podcast. Well, you don't have to worry about it because thanks to the Ray Girl, boom, right there. She sponsors our pod page. So if you're watching and you scan that QR code, that'll bring you to our pod page. And if you're listening, that's podpage.com/thetruenortheagerbeaver with a hyphen between each one of those words. And boom, when we have something fresh off the bandwidth, it comes directly to you. You don't even have to go looking for it. Isn't it great? Because we like to help. Now, if you would like to help us in other ways, well, there are some ways to do that. And one of them is a way that is very recommended to you by our friend Kit Elaine, who always reminds the good people here in the chat the best damn fam in all of podcasting, that if you smash the button early, you don't have to remember to do it before you leave. So if you haven't smashed yet and you'd like to get down to it, well, hey, True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated YouTube page. You go down there, and we have not one, but we have not two, but three buttons for you to smash with. Like, share, subscribe, click them. It helps us with the algorithm. Makes us happy too. So, give your favorite beaver, a little joy. Click my buttons. All right. And if you would like to help us in yet another way, kits and cubs, let's say that way would be financial. For example, right there appearing is a QR code that will bring you to the Beaver Lodge Emergency Hydration Fund, where I basically, this is not true, but I'm saying it because Mr. Grizzly's not here. I basically take all the hot chocolate that you buy for me and put it in this big pool and then swim laps in it. Because I'm decadent. No. It's of course, a fund to help us underwrite the costs of the show that we bring to you, and we hope that you love and appreciate. Sometimes I do buy myself hot chocolate, though, just so you know, to full transparency. But if you would like to make a contribution, we would very much appreciate it. The QR code that just appeared will bring you to our coffee page, and that's coffee spelled ko-fi.com/eagerbeaver, all in one word. And you will find our tip jar, as we call the Emergency Hydration Fund, if you would like to throw a couple of coins in there to make sure that your beaver remains refreshingly moist. Then, because we must save Canada from dry beaver. That's a terrible thing. So, if you like your beaver moist, please drop a few coins there. We really appreciate anything that you are able to give. There's no such thing as too small a contribution. Now, if you're not able to help financially, please don't worry. It's not a thing, right? The gift of your attention and participation is the one that matters the most to us. So we like to hear from you. TrueNorthEagerBeaver@gmail.com is our email address. You can write us at the good place, Blue Sky at True Eager, or the bad place on the Jitter, also at True Eager. You can go to the True North Eager Beaver page on Facebook, which is our original home on the web, and join us there. And if you are listening on YouTube, and hey, if you are listening here on audio and live, well, not live, if you're listening on audio, but you are available mornings around 7 a.m. Eastern time, and you would like to watch the show live, you can do it on our YouTube channel and participate in the chat with the members of our damn fam, who are absolutely delightful. So, but if not, hey, you always have us here on YouTube, and there's a comment section right below. You can let us know what you think. We try to read everything. We do read everything. We're just not able to respond to everyone. But we thank you so much for all that you contribute to making the show better. It means the world to us that you're actively involved and engaged. So thank you. Gives me a warm fuzzy when I see you sharing and retweeting and sending us stuff. So you care about the show and you want it to be good. And that means a lot to me. So thank you for being my partners in bringing this to you. All right, because democracy is something that you do, kids and cubs. Remember, there's a Quebec Liberal leadership race. There's a federal Liberal leadership race. For the Quebec one, you can still register. For the federal one, registrations are open. But if you are registered, candidates will soon be reaching out to try to talk to you and send you their information. Please pay attention and make a judicious choice. The one that is best for you and those that you love, and the one that you think will give Canadians the best option, the best quality person for whom to vote. All right. Let's see what else we have. It would be words of wisdom from Mr. Grizzly, but he's taking Lola out for a walk. So my words of wisdom would be, kids and cubs, today to, how would I put it? Maybe, if we can, to try and take a moment. And what I'm saying is, when there's something that's coming out from the universe, either from social medias or on the news or even just in our daily interactions, where it seems like something's coming for us, right? Just, somebody's trying to needle you or, provoke you or whatnot. Just a deep breath, a nice good one, right? And stop to think, do I need to react to this? And if you don't, just choose not to and continue living your best life. All right? Now, I guess I'm going to have to cue my own cock. That came out wrong. Anyway, I'm being silly. I'm just playing kids and cubs. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am trying to scroll through a whole bunch of things with a tiny little screen and just my finger, and it is not cooperating very well. There it is. I think I have found it. I hope so. Let's see if I stick to the dismount. Pray for me, kids. I'm going in. You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters, CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music. All right, kids and cubs, before we go, just a couple of little announcements for you. As I was signing off, the Bank of Canada has announced that it has cut its key rate by 0.25%. So we will have news for you tomorrow. But again, a drop in interest rates in Canada. So that is good. I will take a quick look to see if the U.S. Federal Reserve that was supposed to announce has also announced today. Nope, no news from them again, but they're expected to stand pat. There's a couple of other events going on today, kids and cubs, before I sign off that you might want to be aware. Kit, believe Kit Dan it was, but it might be somebody else, posted in the chat that Karina Gould was on breakfast television this morning at around 7:30. So it was at this time, but if you have a chance to go look it up on the socials, you might see them there as well. So like I said, the Bank of Canada 9:45 was putting out its monetary policy report. So we'll have more on that because with this one, even though the interest rates are going down, as Governor Tiff Macklem said in December, we need to start looking at stuff. And in this case, the forward-going forecast is going to be particularly important. So I'm going to pay some attention to that later on today when I look at it and hopefully bring it to you tomorrow. There is Crown Indigenous Relations Minister Gary Anandan Sangari, New Brunswick Women's Equality Minister Lynn Chantal Boudreau, and National Family and Survivor Circle Chair Hilda Anderson-Peers will provide opening remarks to kick off the third annual National Indigenous Federal Provincial Territorial Meeting on missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and to us LGBTQI plus people, and that starts at 11 a.m. Elsewhere in the capital, Emergency Preparedness Minister Harjit Sajjan, who has announced that he will not be running on the next election, I believe, will hit the stage at the Ready Conference, an annual event hosted by the Canadian Red Cross that brings together emergency management partners and critical stakeholders from across Canada for discussions on strengthening Canada's readiness to emergencies, and that's already underway. And then let's see, what else do we have here? Newly installed Sports Minister Terry Duguid will share the details of new federal funding for local Indigenous-led sports initiatives at 10 a.m. Central Time. And in Western Canada as well, Employment Minister Stephen McKinnon, who alongside former Team Trudeau frontbencher and local Liberal MP Randy Boissonnault, when Boissonnault recently endorsed Chrystia Freeland, will unveil a fresh tranche of federal support for skilled trades training for Indigenous apprentices during a morning visit to the Edmonton offices of the Trade Winds to Success And National Resources Minister Jonathan Wilkinson was in Calgary to announce new funding to support carbon management technologies in Alberta. Jonathan Wilkinson's announcement will be at 10 a.m. Mountain Time, and the announcement for skilled trades training for Indigenous apprentices will be done at 9:30 Mountain Time. So a very Indigenous themed day today in terms of announcements from the Government of Canada. All right, kids and cubs, that's all I have for you at the moment. Have a beeferific day, and we will see you tomorrow. Bye.